Microeconomic theory takes consumer preferences as set, and then focuses on how these result in consumers' willingness to pay for various goods and services, given some limited budget. By doing this, they show that under certain market conditions, producers will use resources efficiently to match these preferences. But preferences can change, and are a consequence of social factors and advertising. This means that analysis of factors which influence preferences is important for economic research, but it also undermines the ideological implications of the claims of efficiency. If preferences are malleable and the result of a social context, then just because current preferences are met does not mean that well-being is optimized, because these preferences might change with more limited advertising, a less status-orientated society, etc. And production aimed at these new preferences may increase societal welfare. This is not to take a condescending view of consumers, that people don't know what's good for them. People not knowing exactly what will make them happy doesn't mean that a technocratic state will be better able to tell than individuals, but it does mean we should be deeply aware of the existing power structures and societal forces which do shape consumer preferences, and not treat the preferences as if they were formed in a socio-political vacuum. Problems with utility functions. Another major issue is the very limited restrictions which are often placed on the mathematical functions representing consumer preferences. While the complexities of consumer behavior would seem central, most microeconomics has often used very simple static functions for utility, in order to be able to derive demand curves and therefore results for markets from these utility functions. This desire to extend consumer theory as a foundation for the technical architecture discussed in the previous video necessitates that only these simple restricted types of utility functions are used. This is done by deriving demand from various preference curves given changing prices and income, a challenging and impressive technical exercise even if consumers' choice depends only on their income, the prices of all goods available to them, and some predefined static preferences. However, many of the assumptions about these preferences are there only because they are needed to make the method work, rather than because they are rigorously based either empirically or theoretically. Ben Fine goes as far as to speculate that the exact opposite assumptions might have been made if it made the maths easier. Some examples of neoclassical assumptions. One example is the assumption that consumer preferences will always be consistent, in the sense that there is no times when there are cycles in preferences. So there are no three baskets of goods for which a consumer will pick basket B over basket A, then pick basket C over B, but also pick basket A over C. So basically, there's no rock, paper, scissors equivalent when it comes to how consumers order their preferences. Instead, if B is preferred over A and C over B, for preferences to be consistent, we must choose C over A. This would make sense if there was only one criteria, utility, and we made choices based only on evaluating the amount of utility each good gave us when we consumed it. However, we often make decisions based on a whole collection of criteria and use different criteria when making different consumption decisions. So, we can easily end up relying on different criteria when comparing A and B, B and C, and C and A. For example, A and B may both be health foods, and when judging, we decide that B is healthier. Then, comparing B and C, we choose C because it has better labor standards and is environmentally friendly. But when thinking about A and C, we compare them on how tasty we find both of them. This problem is much more evident when one is not dealing only with 3 products, but with thousands and thousands of different combinations of products, which one could spend one's budget on. There is no feasible way in which consumers could really be expected to spend the time to fully compare how every option would affect their overall welfare. Further assumptions include the mathematical criteria that utility functions are continuous and not in a set ratio, as well as the assumption that more is always better. This means that no one in this model ever limits their consumption before reaching their budget limit based on some frugal, green, or non-materialistic beliefs. So, what are the alternatives? There are numerous other theories of consumer behavior and the value they place upon goods. From Marxist emphasis on use, exchange, and labor value to postmodern theories that goods are consumed as signs and signifiers of the consumer's identity. There are also many theories on consumption outside of economics, in anthropology, psychology, and sociology. Ben Fine, however, suggests that many of these theories are limited because they seldom link production and consumption, and are overextended because they attempt to find a unified theory for all consumption, which often is too different. Ben Fine suggests replacing this horizontal analysis, creating a theory for all consumption, with a vertical analysis, focusing on a full industry from production to consumption. He suggests that this will better capture how both marketing affects consumer preferences and how the push for marketable products drives producers not to seek out what consumers already want, but to develop products for which they can easily manufacture demand. This is obviously done within limitations of how much consumer preferences may be altered in the future. This would allow for research to analyze the large amount of non-market interactions between supply and demand in an industry, which go into shaping the ultimate market interactions. Conclusion. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe, and check out some of my other content. Do you feel like this description matches the way you make choices about what to consume? Or do you feel like your behavior is closer to that described by the neoclassical school? Let me know in the comments below.